Hello, everyone. It's International Women's Day, and we at the News Minute are bringing you this special broadcast. I'm Dhanya Rajendran, editor in chief of the News Minute, and joining me are three women I personally admire a lot. In fact, they are inspiring people who teach me all the time what to do about certain things, what not to do. So, introducing to you Priya Ramani, Chinmayi, and Parvati. Priya is joining us from Bangalore, Chinmayi is joining us from Chennai, and Parvati is joining us from Kochi. So, just to tell all the viewers and to the three guests, so what happens is when we decide on the panel, we ask the TNM members to send us questions. And we've got around like 50 to 100 questions this time, but each one of them are very serious questions. I'm now starting to think that TNM members are too serious. They don't want to ask any fun question. It's all so serious that I'm feeling very depressed asking them. But so maybe we'll start in a fun way and then we'll go to all the serious questions in the world. So,
Yeah.
a friend of mine, she has sent me this to irritate me, but these are the kind of messages I normally get on Women's Day. Woman, wheel of family, ocean of knowledge, mirror of children, address of love, navigator of lifeboat. Parvati, what are the most irritating Women's Day messages that you've got till now, or like what you got today?
I think after a long time. First of all, let me just say what a lovely panel to be here with Chinmayi and Priya. It's amazing, and with you, Danya, and thanks for everybody else who's joined. I think after a while, you sort of start having a filter. You start blocking all that kind of noise that you suddenly become oblivious to those messages, the forwards that come. So I think it's been a while I've gotten affected, but I remember when I was in college and most of the even my classmates and everyone's like, what's the best thing or what's the thing that you would love the most to be allowed to do? I'm like, I mean, as a woman on Women's Day, if you had one wish to be allowed to do, I'm like, dude, do it again, redo the question needs to be asked again. Like, the word allow needs to be taken away. I think for me that was the biggest shocker of studying in a all women's college. Everybody heading every powerful things done in the college, like all women, but still having this word conditioned into them, they allow. That was the silliest, most shocking thing for me, and it never made sense to me from a very young age why the word allow always was supposedly this granted wish thing. So I guess for me it's always that. Yeah,
I'm remembering this conversation we both have laughed about a lot about a Malayalam actor who once told me, I am very liberal. I even allow my wife to work. And I'm like, dude, you just said that. We will not take names here. Okay. So, Chinmay, tell us. Now, Parvati is not revealing any irritating messages she got today, but Chinmay, you tell us.
I got a few of them today. It's all of those cute images and all that. The woman stands up despite everything else. You have faced hardships, bravery, resilience. So I don't know. After a point now, I think people don't really engage. They just send me one flower image and say Happy Women's Day. So I'm like, wow, it's okay.
Or you will tweet it. And they're like, oh no. Nobody got this image of that woman with multiple hands and then she's holding a spoon in one, a cradle in the other, a bib in the next one. Nobody got that?
you got that? Who is it?
I got it last year, not this year.
Yeah. Remember, that was a cover story, right? And it got called out. So after that, I think people didn't do it anymore.
Priya, now you tell us.
Are you looking at the phone? Yes,
funny messages, but I got a brilliant one from a friend of mine that said Happy Women's Day, and it was a photo of her husband lying on the ground fixing the seat of the toilet, and she had written, "My husband's fixing my toilet seat today."
So, anyways, I think we have all progressed a bit. That the number of messages on Women's Day, the irritating ones, have reduced.
Yes.
Or maybe it's just our experience that people are just
could be that they were really scared, and I think they should.
Whatever it is, I'm very happy about the outcome.
Yes, me too.
Okay. So now we'll go to the serious questions. Like I said, every member has sent a serious question, but we'll start with my question first. So I'll go to each one of you. We'll try to keep the answers short also because there are lots of questions. But Priya, I'll come to you first. How important is it that we address workplace harassment? All of you have done that in your own industries. You have spoken up about it. You may have gone to court about it. You have gone to the police about it. at whatever levels, how important is it that women, men, and workplaces talk and address workplace harassment? Priya?
It's super important because women should be able to go to work without worrying that they're going to be the target of sexual violence, because workplace harassment is more prevalent than you can imagine. We've all experienced it, and because perpetrators of this violence think that we were not going to talk about it and that they will be able to get away with it. Because for any country to progress and be prosperous, it needs women in its labor force.
Okay, Chinmay?
Extremely important. But I think right now, the kind of pushback that women get, right, whenever we speak up, we are being now used as examples to not follow, right?
Oh.
So if you speak up, this is what will happen. So why do you want to do it? So we are, I think, more or less, at least I'm going to just speak for myself. I think I'm in that phase where it's not, it's brave and all, it's good and all, but don't do this if you want to, basically ruin your life.
So,
sort of a
Chinmay,
thing.
are you saying that people use you as an example to say, look what happened to her and what she went
Yeah.
through? Therefore,
Yeah.
you shouldn't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Parvati, would you have the same experience or would you differ?
I did have the same experience. In 2018, I spoke about how after I spoke against the film Kasaba and the misogynistic scenes in it, there was this very palpable indifference within the industry and a sudden lack of opportunities, regardless of the fact that I had back-to-back hits the last 2 years, 2 years before that. And it just seemed very unnatural not to have any offers or the phone not ringing for about 8 or 9 months. And I spoke about it openly in another interview, and that got talked about in terms of how women who speak up end up losing, whistleblowers end up losing jobs, and they become, like Chinmay says, they are like shown as the example. Do you want to end up like her? Now the thing is that it made me think at the time that a lot of actresses that I watched while I was growing up, after a point, they just sort of vanish, right? They're not there anymore, mainly because there are no good characters written for older women, but also the fact that the moment they ask for the right price, like what their remuneration is supposed to be, or they ask for, let's say, basic sanitation or human rights, really, they are slowly phased out, and they are made to feel, and they, like, people have just accepted the notion that we are replaceable. And so it just got on to me like a fire in my blood that I'm going to make sure I'm not replaceable, and I'm going to make sure that women around me, whoever are working with me, feel the same way too. Like, you're not just expendable, you are irreplaceable. What you bring to the table cannot be brought in by another person, and you're an individual and you should be treated like one. So regardless of, and like Chinmay said, it's all brave, and it's amazing to get support messages, and it's great to see that a lot of people are feeling motivated, but it is tough. It is so tough, the constant attack, the mental trauma that you carry with you for years to come, for the rest of your life, really. So it's a commitment for life, and you have to make up your mind to do it, knowing that. So for me, especially since what happened in Feb 2017 to our colleague, it was life before that and after. I mean, there was no way I could continue in this industry or continue life knowing that I'm choosing a life of no dignity, and I'm allowing people to walk all over me. So I was ready. What's the worst that can happen? I remember telling my parents, what's the worst that can happen? I could get killed. I could be attacked. I could be raped. Now, isn't that anyway going to happen to me? In any case, that's going to happen to me. I mean, the odds are just the same. So I might as well speak up. I might as well be an example of someone who walks the talk and continues to stay in the fight, no matter how difficult it gets. And trust me, and my friends know this, it gets really difficult. I'm not always this strong, and I get weak and everything, but I'm here. I'm still here. So very important.
So I'll quickly go back to Chinmay. Our first member is here who will ask the question, Shubha. Before I go to Shubha, Chinmay, I know you had a court hearing today. I mean, it didn't happen, but it was listed. And your complaint was filed many years ago. This is not. So how is that whole battle going for you? Just explain the complaint and how it's been going?
So basically, it is the dubbing union ban, which has extrapolated everything else in Tamil. Just like Parvati was talking about how it's happened for her. So what I did was one name Mr. Vairamuthu and then also out other stories about Mr. Radha Ravi, who's the head of the dubbing union. And as I had tweeted then, I did that I now see my W2 smoke. And it did. And I think within a couple of weeks, I think they just had to figure out how they can, write this termination letter and stuff like that. So without a show cause notice, they terminated me and they sent me, one of those notices that they send, I'm forgetting probably right now, but one of those notices that they send that, they need to know what you're doing before you file it or something like that. So they sent it for Madras High Court, and then they didn't send it for City Civil. So I went to the City Civil Court and filed my case. And it's been going on since November 2018, where I'm actually basically fighting for my right to work. And even though I have an interim injunction to say that, my right to livelihood is affected, Mr. Radha Ravi makes it a point to call people and say, if you work with her, then the rest of the dubbing union will not work with you. And today was actually the fourth time we are arguing the same case because Mr. Radha Ravi is just dragging it here and there and asking for more time and dragging it even more. He's very clear when he goes on stage and he speaks. He said, yeah, she filed a case. We know how it is with the Indian judiciary. It will take 20 years. By the time her life will be over, we'll see what happens to her. So he knows, and he knows exactly how to go about stalling and delaying and make sure that, but the process becomes a lot troublesome for me. Thankfully, my lawyers are extremely wonderful people. And I see the number of messages that I get from other people, caught with the wrong sort of lawyers, and they're just bleeding money. And I have all the support from my lawyers. I'm able to go and it's a bloodbath as long as the court scene itself is concerned. It's like one of those scenes that you may see from Pink. It's a character assassination. Radha Ravi's lawyer says this woman's character itself is like this. So he starts like that. His argument starts about my character, not really about the merits of the case. And today, it's not today because there was like a lawyer boycott of sorts with the courts today. I'll have another date where I'll just have to go and present myself and hope to God that the judge understands the merits of my case and what I'm going through personally. But as Parvati said, there are days that I feel so very defeated and it all seems very pointless and worthless. I can, there are days that I just wake up and like, yes, this is it. And then I'm like, what the heck? Where am I going? And I think the past several days, especially, seeing Vairamuthu being platformed by all these, Tamil politicians, it's literally, this is exactly what I was scared about speaking up against him. And now I literally have, I fear for my life. I wonder what will happen, if any of these guys come to power, what's going to happen to me? I mean, BJP or DMK, it's like either way I get to lose, right? Any which way. Because Radha Ravi uses the BJP's power, Vairamuthu uses the DMK's and every other Tamil Nationalist party's power to do whatever he wants. And the industry is blatant, what shall I say, absolute backing of him. 100 songs. He's doing an independent project of 100 songs. And the entire industry is singing, directing. And clearly he has the money or the power or the sponsorship, or if he's not paying any of these artists, all of these artists are, working with him because of his power and influence. So that's eventually what it comes down to, right? So overall, I think I want to sound very hopeful, but today is really not one of those days because, the court, and if there's one of those police people who doesn't recognize, like, my divorce case, like, madam, not divorce case, I've come for a different case. So automatically they movement out of the court, my divorce case, like, no. So I have clothes for the court, a way of dress code for the court, how I'm supposed to wear for my hair for the court, all of this, you're given these list of things as to how you're supposed to present yourself. So it's very, very tough. All of that kind of chips away at you in ways that you don't envisage. But I still have some strength in me. We'll see.
So just, Shubha, I'll come to you 1 minute. I want to go to Priya back. So just taking off from what Chinmay said, the last one thing for everyone here to digest is that Chinmay is a person who made the accusation, who amplified, but she's the one whose livelihood has been impacted. It's her livelihood that's been impacted, not of the men. So that's something that is a takeaway for all of you from the session. And what you were saying about going to court to dress in a certain way, we had covered this story for a long time about a woman in Bangalore whose child was allegedly raped by the husband, and she had gone to court. Now she would wear spaghetti tops and those kind of clothes. And eventually, when the judgment came, there was nothing about the DNA test results, or they never found who raped that child. But the judge kept on harping about the fact how this woman dressed, and that she sent a nude video of hers to her own husband. So the judge is like, a woman who sends a nude video of hers to her husband, her morals are questionable. So these are things which really happens. But Priya, I want to go to a little happier note. I mean, Chinmay he's very defeated, feels very defeated today. But you are someone who just won a case. Everyone feels you are a trailblazer. I know that it was very difficult for you through the case. So take us. I mean, a lot of people have sent us this question. What were your emotions? I read one story article where you said you were not even thinking too much. It was just date by date you went. So how did you manage this whole thing, and what did you feel when that verdict came?
So I was lucky that on like the day he filed the criminal defamation complaint against me, I cold called this lawyer whom I didn't know. Whom, another journalist said, you must call her. So I called her and I said, hi, this is Priya. I don't know if you've seen the news, but this has happened. Do you think you would be able to fight my case? And she said, yes. And literally that was it. The deal was sealed. She fought pro bono for me. So that was a huge monetary relief. Then, of course, the case was in Delhi. My family's in Bangalore. I have a 10-year-old who I had to sort of manage every time. But I also have a very supportive partner who's always steps in. Sometimes we're two primary parents fighting. Like one friend told me that when I go to other people's houses, they say, no, you do it. When I come to your house, you say, no, I'll do it. And he says, no, I'll do it. So I had that kind of, family support. Parents and his parents, my parents, everyone was super supportive. And then it was just a matter of like building some resilience and going once a month, twice a month for 2.5 years from Bangalore to Delhi. And I had friends luckily in Delhi because I had worked there, and two girlfriends especially who just opened their homes for me and made me super comfortable, and basically held my hand through this entire process. And other friends too who came for hearings. The first hearing, there's a picture of the first hearing, if you see, which has everyone from Rajdeep Sardesai to Nidhi to like lots of people, everybody came for the first court appearance. Just to show the judge that I'm not alone, that I have the support of the media community, which is so rare in these times. And then it was just a matter of withstanding all the stuff. In court, it was hard because every time the words "Me Too" were uttered, the other side's lawyers used to snigger. And the worst day was when my witness Ghazala Wahab gave her super painful testimony, and everyone in the opposing side was sniggering and whispering and trying to distract her, and they're all young women, led by a woman lawyer. So that was very disturbing to see. Then I think I got lucky. I had 3 judges who were like reasonably understanding and empathetic, and especially the first judge was just amazing, and like at one point Mr. Akbar kept saying, no, I don't know about this, I don't know about that, I don't remember. Then my lawyer asked him, do you know about the Me Too movement? And I think he was about to say, I don't remember, or I don't know, or something. And the judge said, Mr. Akbar, you must be knowing about the Me Too movement. Everybody knows about the Me Too movement, So there was that kind of like little reassurance, at least in the beginning. Towards when we got to near the verdict, then it was very stressful that, what's going to happen, what influences are going to work, how is this going to pan out and all that. And yeah, there was definitely a dress code in court. I salwar kameezes on everyone. I never wear salwar kameezes.
Parvati, that's for you. You're the only one who's not been to court till now.
I've never
I
been-
hope you don't also.
There
I
was a
don't wish that upon you.
there was a debate about whether I should tie up my curly hair or not, because curly haired women are always seen as bad women in India.
Oh, that too. You need to tie up your hair and oil it if possible in
I
in high
decided not
court.
to, actually. I decided to just I wore salwar kameezes and never wore sleeveless to court and all the rest of that. Just it was. I'm just like I couldn't believe it when when the verdict was announced. Finally, I was just so happy, and people around me were crying, and like all my friends, family, everyone was crying, and I just couldn't stop laughing. Couldn't stop smiling even through the mask. Everybody could see my smile, and I know I haven't shed a single tear since I won.
It's so amazing. I think we cried. I was teary-eyed.
Yes,
and I
we
put
were
out one
so
cry.
tense. And the way Bar and Bench, I remember, was tweeting, we first thought that it's going against you. And I remember my colleague Sayukta, who was keeping the story ready, she was so upset. And another colleague called Geetika was like, shit, shit, shit in our group. And then Bar and Bench then started tweeting other stuff. We were like, oh my God, we are winning the case. She's winning the case.
And by the way, that day in court, there was like at least 20 female police officers outside the courtroom for the first time in 2 years and 4 months. And I was convinced that these guys have come to arrest me, even though.
Wow.
Anyway.
Is there any dress code for men? I just saw one of the
No.
was asking though.
I don't think they are, particularly said, because I've seen men in jeans, I've seen men in jeans and t-shirts, slacks, vesti, all of that.
Maybe
they
not
come in
sleeveless, but everything else is fine.
Yeah, everything else is fine.
So we'll go to Shubha now. Shubha, you want to ask your question?
Yeah. Hi,
Shubha is a
I'm
journalist.
Shubha.
She writes wonderfully. Most of you would know her anyway. Yes, Shubha, please ask.
Hi. Yeah. So this has to do with one very unfair question that is very often asked of Chinmay and Priya, especially about the delay, within courts in speaking about sexual harassment at the workplace. And some of these questions come from a place of ignorance, some come from a place of entitlement. And every time this question is asked, I'm sure it chips away at little pieces of you. How do you preserve and protect yourself to fight the long fight? Because it must be taking a lot. Like many of us who follow your cases, like I've written about you, Chinmay, and I cringe every time someone asks, anything happens, they think they have to tag Chinmay. Or anything happens, they have to drag Priya. And I'm glad Priya's, not often on Twitter. So, they can't tag her anymore. But, they keep doing that. And Parvati, yes, she steps back off and on. But how do you all preserve yourself for the long fight? Because when we as viewers get so irritated seeing the questions being directed at you, how do you all cope?
Parvati, you can begin. And Chinmay and Priya, she's also asking, people ask, why didn't you talk about this harassment before? Like Parvati, remember once you mentioned about a harassment there, like why are you not naming the person? Why did you not say before? That irritating question.
No, I mean that's a very irritating and quite a traumatic question to ask somebody who is still mustering up the courage to even accept that this actually did happen to them. And to be honest, there are so many things that I am still not ready to speak about, because I know for a fact that my life is going to be in danger, my parents are going to be in danger, and I'm hoping in due time there would be enough of an army of women or people to support the statements that I would like to make eventually. And I'm still mustering up the courage for it, and I'm not going to be apologetic about, because it's my trauma. It's what's happened to me, so I get to decide when I speak about it. And that's not the denial of justice. The denial of justice is what happened with the exploitation and harassment and abuse in the first place. How I cope with the broken pieces in me is my decision. So that's the initial part of the question. My coping mechanism is this, Shubha. Like I go off of social media, I go invisible, and I don't do that without guilt. There are times so many people write to me on my DMs telling me that my speaking up has helped them speak up in whichever way, in whatever capacity that they could. And while I feel a certain, I don't know, the sisterhood of it, the togetherness of it, what you individually go through in darkness is just so I can't articulate it, and I can't reach out for help because no one can help except just me. And if I keep distracting myself, and if I keep the noise on, I, at least speaking for myself, I really struggle, and I go into really painful bouts of, depression. So that's very tough for me. So I do go away from all social media. I do keep Twitter, mainly because, and this is not taking a dig at the journalists really, but there are times when some really off, like, headline would come about me, something that I've never said, and I need at least one portal where I can go and call them out. That's the only reason I kept Twitter on. But the
Like
rest,
how you are going to contest for the CPIM.
yeah, apparently, like, I mean, I didn't even say that. So those things, that's the only thing. But what happens to me, especially as an artist, as an actor who's constantly there on screen, otherwise my face is everywhere, the movie releases, I'm supposed to do the promotions and all of that. I mean, actors are supposed to do that. It does take a toll already for me as a person, as a human being, to be constantly in the spotlight. But then adding to that is everybody asking 15 million questions about imperfect feminism rather than questioning, misogyny, like complete, like that's something uh, that helps me definitely. And I have now become very unapologetic. I do speak to a lot of people, and when I leave, I do tell them that you should do it too. You're not obliged to stay on. This is your fight. I mean, you have to be kind to yourself before you're out there, like put out your own oxygen mask wala philosophy, to be honest. Like, yeah.
Chinmay, have you ever thought of that to sometimes stay away? And do you do that?
Yeah, I
Why,
get
why now?
asked
Why so
every day.
late?
I
Yeah.
get asked every day. That's simply all the love that Mr. Vairamuthu has from the Tamil diaspora, which is, Sri Lankan Tamils across the world, right? They're all asking the same question in both Tamil and in English. So the why so late is clearly coming from a lot of ignorant men, and they have the standard rule. You have to take your slipper and slap him. Otherwise, you are not the actual Tamil, dignified, chaste woman. So I have failed that chastity test. So this is not the sort of a woman that they, believe, or the kind of woman that should, exist. So initially I was answering. I still do answer a couple of these people, but I think yes, it does chip away, and a lot of them, they come from a place of ignorance, and also they don't want to learn. They don't want to get any better. They just want to ask that and keep asking that. It's, I think, overall, whether it's because we're still a society which the first response to a rape case in this country is what was she wearing, no? It's not really what happened, why, how did it happen. It's more about everybody has a normal response to jump, and now it's also the false accusation. Now that everybody wants to now jump in to say that every rape case is a false accusation. They pick up these cases where somewhere they have found that it's been proven that it's no longer a rape case. It's very, very bad. So, but then I think every time, women have found a way of speaking up, there we have always, I think, across history, we have always found a clapback, and we power through anyway. Yeah.
Priya, to quickly ask,
Yeah.
does it chip away at you? Like when people keep asking the same question, why are you speaking up now? Why didn't you say this earlier?
Of course it does. Every time before hearing, I used to be tagged on Twitter and, told that there's no way I can win this case. Something that happened 25 years ago is not going to hold up in a court of law. Luckily, I had evidence and good testimonies to back my case. So I just got off Twitter. Then there was a lot of demand. Anytime anything happened in the Me Too movement or something, there was like, people calling me for first anniversary, second anniversary, every time anything happened. So I would just say that this case is sub judice. I cannot talk about it. I have no idea if it was really sub judice or not, but I would just tell people that. And for 2 years and 4 months, I never spoke about my case. And also,
because it's too much to keep speaking about it also all the time.
Yeah, and just I didn't want to get into this. It's debilitating to keep. Like I spoke up, and now I am fighting this battle. And behind the scenes, I was happy to talk to anyone, but I didn't want to talk to. I didn't have anything more to say publicly until the verdict came out.
Hmm.
And, I just surrounded myself with people who supported me, basically, and who could withstand my mood swings and my anxiety and my, stress and like help me deal with it. But and the verdict, my verdict actually answered many of these questions, as Chinmay herself has pointed out in previous interviews. The judge said women can speak up whenever they want, as many years after the incident as they want, and women can choose any medium to speak up. Women women can speak up on social media. Basically, the judge was validating the Me Too movement.
So in fact, after your judgment came, before your judgment came, we got an injunction notice. There's another woman called Sandhya Menon, who was also putting out a lot of Me Too testimonies. So through her, we got a case in Bangalore where a woman was sexually harassed by somebody in a company. So my colleague Geetika reached out to the company for the reaction. They immediately put an injunction, and they said that the court gave them the injunction saying that why should she speak up on a public forum? But we're going to challenge it, and we're going to use your judgment to actually challenge, saying there is a precedent saying women can go to public forums if they do not get justice in their own workplace. So I'm going to ask a question to Parvati, and then I'll move to Nityashri, who's a member who wants to ask. Parvati, both Priya said even when she went for the case in New Delhi, she stayed with her friends. Chinmay said that she gets a lot of support from certain people. So your question from Adira, she's asking, how important has female friendships been for you? And how has it molded you as a person?
I'm going to try and answer that without crying. I'm going to try. It's been a lifesaver, nothing short of it. I was mentioning this to a colleague of mine the other day, that I spent the first, let's say, 8 to 9 out of 15 years that I've been working only surrounded by men. And that's not like a bad thing, it's just that was the status quo, right? That's how things are. There's only like 2 women on set and then the rest are men, and we got very used to that kind of a dynamic. And ever since Women in Cinema Collective was formed, that slowly had started changing. And then when the Kasaba incident happened, like when I spoke up and this attack, this whole organized attack happened, I found women who literally like cradled me through it. I remember, Daniel, I mean, this is something that I would like to mention here. I remember I was in Dubai. I took my parents to Dubai, and my parents were actually very, very scared to go to Dubai because Dubai has a lot of Malayalis and a lot of Mammootty fans. So what if, like, on the street or something, you're attacked? Like, I'm like, this is a New Year time. I would love to actually get away from the noise, so let's go. And I wasn't there. I wasn't present for that vacation or anything, because from morning till I got a shut eye, I would be on Twitter, refreshing, taking screenshots of all the abuses so that I could send it to the lawyer, to the police. And I remember I had a massive breakdown when I got to know that the boy, one of the boys who sent me a rape and death threat, got bailed out by the producer of this film. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't that this guy got a bailout and was being celebrated on social media, by the way. And I broke down, and I was in a mall, and Dhanya, you were on call with me, and we were in this close at the time, but you just told me, Parvati, the world is not going to end if you switch off your phone for just 2 hours. Don't look at your phone, just switch off your phone. Don't look at Twitter. And I realized I needed permission. It was as if I did that on my own, it was like, what if I fail? Or what if I fail at this fight? Or what if I'm doing the wrong thing? I just had no clue what to do. But the fact that you told me that, and eventually, like, the friends that I got through that incident, Adira being one of them, I feel like every time I overworked myself, I felt too emotional, too sensitive, and extremely ready to break apart. It's always been my reaching out, or them reaching out and saying, you can let go right now. It's okay. Don't hold it too tight. You'll cut yourself. And it's so important to have that kind of a safety net in your life. And for me, I have that. And regardless of that, I still find it difficult. So I don't know what it is like for those women who don't have this. I still have days where Chinmay, this whole pointlessness that I feel, and defeatist way I feel that, okay, nothing's going to make sense. And I always try and tell myself that maybe my story isn't going to be the success story. My story is going to be the one that's going to be the country, but there's always going to be a Priya who will have that. So I don't get to write the entire narrative. Maybe mine is going to be till the end something that is going to be a struggle. I don't wish that for anybody, but if it is like that, so be it. Still, the head should be held up high and we continue. But yeah, I mean, that's my answer to female friendships. Rock solid.
So I'll cut to two questions from members. First, I'll go to Nityashree, then I'll go to Bibi. Nityashree, you're ready with the question. Can you please ask?
So yeah, thanks for this opportunity, and I've loved listening to everyone. Let me just read out the question because I put a lot of thought into actually framing this the right way. So, women scientists, lady doctor, female politicians, and maybe woman journalists, for example. I don't know. Should we continue to acknowledge the womanhood of the person fulfilling these roles, and acknowledging the womanhood would also include acknowledging all the struggles that come with it? Or do you think it's time to keep this practice to the curb? What are your thoughts? I've given this a lot of thought and I don't really know what I think yet, but I'd love to hear what everyone else thinks.
Another member, Kruti, says that this was my question too. Hita says lady superstar should answer this. So before we go to lady superstar, Priya, do you have anything to say about the question?
Yeah. So I like you, I probably get a little irritated when I see a page in the newspaper marked she or gender or, whatever. But I do feel that, like women's histories and women's stories have been hidden away for so long. We are not there in school textbooks. We're not there. We're not in parliament. We've been fighting nearly 25 years to get some law to be passed so that more of us are represented, more of us have political representation. So I think these are minor issues, really. You want to call her a lady doctor, call her a doctor, whatever, just share her story. And, as long as those stories are out there, I don't care how they're labeled. Even I've thought a lot about this, and this is what.
Okay. Lady superstar.
Okay, so it's like picking your battles, right? I mean, there are so many things that I would like to change in this way. So there are times when they say, okay, should you say female oriented films? Most of the calls I get these days is that, ma'am, you will really like this film because it's female oriented. And I'm like, there is no male oriented film. So why are we genderizing the story? There is a character, I'm sure we're going to follow that character, be it a man, woman, trans, it doesn't matter. So my entire thing, I don't know from when I started, but it's been many years that I've been telling people, just call it a story. Don't orient it to a gender. It's fine. I'm still going to do it even if it's a male lead. I mean, that is not the selling point for me. It's actually the opposite. But I would like to, if in little steps, without losing our sanity over it, if we can start correcting in our inner circles how we genderize things where it doesn't need to be. But at the same time, what Priya said is so important, right? At the same time, then if you say that, are you saying so all women film festival shouldn't be there? It should be there, because we've not had representation so for far too long. We've not had a platform to present our work for such a long time that now we need to sort of, for lack of a better word, I would use the word compensate, but we need to really sort of pump it up and create as many venues as possible. And if that means we have to call it an all women's film festival, so be it, because there is enough representation going on for the other gender. And so we would like to create such platforms which can be called, so let's say this is Women in Cinema Collective, it is for women. Now that is not genderizing it. That's actually calling a fight a fight. So it's just finding ways to tell our stories, like Priya said, to be able to tell our story, the history of female fight, that should be there. But I would always correct a journalist if they call a female director. I'm like, it's obvious. I can see the person and I kind of know. And I wouldn't assume if, that person is trans. I would always respectfully ask what their pronoun is. And then that's that. That's it's actually just three-step process. So I do correct people when they have interviews with me like that. or if they tell me female-oriented films, I do correct that. I think it's time to kick it in the curb. Yeah.
So Nitya, I think what they're saying is that there's not one solution or one answer for this. It basically is according to the situation, whether it's needed or whether it's not needed. I think Bibi, can you ask your question to Chinmay? Bibi, can you
Hi.
unmute yourself?
Yeah. Hi, nice meeting you all here.
Bibi is from Chennai. It's in Chennai.
Yeah, and I'm a scientist, like I'm a budding scientist. I was working as a lecturer in a couple of reputed colleges here, and I had to leave my job because of some unprofessional issues related to the gender. And also, I struggle a lot. Like after my pregnancy, the pregnancy is in fact a disqualification in academia. So because of pregnancy, we are like out of the field. Now I'm struggling to get back to career. And for my friend, again, she finished her PhD and she got Department of Science and Technology rewarded her like 80 lakhs fund for her research and all that. Because she got pregnant, she was not allowed. She was sent out actually. By the head of the department. We struggle a lot in academia, actually. So I, in fact, feel jealous about journalists and women in cinema. You have a collective group where you support each other. We don't have that. We have nothing like that. Our fights are lonely. We fight alone. We fight for our rights. We fight for our positions, and we are just alone in this. So I don't want this women collective cinema, women collective journalists. I want women fight together for everything. So is there any solution for that we are heard? We all complain
No,
a lot.
Bibi, I'll just summarize the question so that we can move to the answer. Basically, she's asking, can we unify these efforts, Chinmay? What is the way to unify these efforts? Is that possible?
I think it is, but I think the challenges of, I was unaware completely that something like this happens in academia. I somehow think that people who are academics, intellectuals have all of this sorted. So this is the general, idea that you have. Intellectuals, my God, I couldn't get my maths correct. I'm sure they have sorted all of this out, sort of a thing, right? I wouldn't have I would not know the challenges of somebody in academia as would somebody from a completely different field know the challenges of what it is like for a playback singer or an actor, things like not having a restroom at their shoot spot or not having caravans. And now there are actresses who say that if there is a female lady, the female lady can come and use their caravans. Earlier, some of these people used to proudly say that women would change in public places while the men held up their dhotis or something like that, other cloths or something like that, so that the women could change. And that was how safe it was all. So you speak about all of that, and then you are aware of stuff like that happens. I think eventually we should be in a position to be able to unify and also to, hear each other out. I think all of us are somehow also working very independently, leading our own battles. And this is news to me. What Bibi told me today, it's news to me. Nobody really speaks about it. It's not in the public forum. At least I have not noticed it. So it would be great for all of us to unify, but at some level, I think our each sector has its challenges that is understandable by them. For example, when women from Dalit sections, they speak about it. They say that I would like representation, because you will not understand as a Savarna woman what my challenges are, right? So I tend to think that we all need to operate in our own sector singularly as a group, and also as a collective overall as well. And how do we also make it intersectional and include women of women who are also transforming right now, all of that, or transitioning, sorry. So all of that is stuff that we can only learn as we go, I believe.
So I'll just go to Priya and Parvati quickly. We'll keep the answers short because we have more questions. Priya, just taking off from what Chinmay said, we all come from a position of privilege in many ways. So how does that also help us? And what do you have to say to so many people so many women also who do not have that privileges that we have?
It's a tough question. I mean, all I can do is recognize my privilege and, use it to fight a battle that might be useful to other women. And I mean, I did, as I told you, I had family support, I had support from friends, I had the money to pay for my tickets from Bangalore to Delhi, even though it may have been a big expense. I had a good lawyer. So all those sort of pieces just fell into place. I knew everybody in the media community, so I got a lot of support from them. But I don't know. I mean, in terms of how to fight this bigger battle, I mean, we need to just strengthen our institutions firstly. I mean, actually, Me Too didn't begin in 2018, right? It began with Riya Sarkar's list of academia a couple of years before 2018. So I mean,
2017, yeah.
This story plays out in every field, whether it's journalism or academia, whatever. So we have to strengthen institutions. We have to strengthen family bonds. I mean, like, you have to be able to be confident that your family will support you. It's women who don't get any support from the people who are closest to them, I shudder to think how they manage. I mean, there are no easy answers. I mean, I can just
So Nandita Jairaj had also asked the same question. What are your views on privilege? And Parvati, I'm just going to put this a little differently for you. In fact, one of the members asked the question. I'm not able to find the name. Maybe Raga can help you with the name. In your case, because you're an artist, how are you careful when it comes to matters of representation? Because that's a question, or that's a controversy you will often find yourself in, right?
Just before I touch upon that, I just do want to say that, like, I remember, and I don't know if I can mention her name, but one of the co-founders of WCC, in one of her interviews, had mentioned this, that there was a time when all these things all these things were happening. We were all very alone in it, like, in terms, this was like, we all felt like there was no way we could reach out to a fellow actress or another female technician or anybody to say that, oh, this is happening to me, have you had such an experience? There was no forum, no place to go and do this. The unfortunate incident, though, in Feb 2017, rattled us so much, and she was complaining about there is no place to go, there's no safety and all of this. And one of her friends told us, like, you cannot expect a forum to start on its own, like, and then reach you. Maybe you're the beginning of it, you need to start that. And she's the first person who contacted me to start WCC2. So it has to start, like, maybe in whatever capacity of strength you do have. And I can see in the chat box, a lot of people are reaching out to BB as well, saying that they felt the same way and they want to start something. It does start from you. With whatever privilege that we do have, we start expanding it from there, and then it's like manifesting it, that the right people with the right power will come and join us, or we will reach to that position. I mean, it is an act of faith at the end of the day. Like, that's how we started WCC2. But again, now I'll answer what you asked.
Parvati, 1 minute. I think Shyam, you can come in if you want to ask more about representation, because you had a similar question. Can he just ask, and then you can ask?
Yeah.
Hi, thank you. You see, in this window, I'm the only one with mustaches and a beard.
I have one if you look close.
But see, my mustaches and beard are different. I'm a trans-masculine person. I'm a transgender, a female to male transgender person. Okay, female to masculine. I wouldn't even say. And then non-binary. I'm very feminine myself. I'm a mommy to my dog. Okay. So my concern is, yes, this representation is a very important thing, and plus my anxiety over this, like, when I still remember when the Me Too story started to come out on Facebook, and how triggering it was, because triggering it was in the sense, not triggering it was for me from the inside, that where is our voice? Where is our voice? Okay, where are our kind? And see, I myself come with a huge background of severe abuse and several such things. Okay, So a lot of trans men, trans masculine people, it is a very, very common thing for this, corrective rape and all such kind of things. Okay. And in this entire movement, feminist movement, which is only which has taken the role of feminism is equal to womanhood. That narrative is something that is very, very, it keeps us very, very excluded. So I'd say, but I have my uterus concerns. I also have my vagina concerns. Okay. So even,
Shyam, I'll just let us, Parvati answer this. Parvati, so because we have to also go to other questions. Parvati,
so concluding the question, I wanted to ask what would you like to do about this kind of an inclusion, which is intersectional inclusions, which are important. Trans masculine people are not represented properly in this thing. Everything is taking the narrative of womanhood. And appropriation and all those things, I think Chinmay ji answered very beautifully. The same thing that goes for Savarna women and it also goes for other voices. So yes, please. Yes.
Parvati, yes.
Thank you for that question, Shyam. And I really feel like the first thing that I always say when it comes to representation and inclusion, conversation regarding that, is that I myself am let's just say like that happened a while ago, but I am listening more, in knowing the fact that I actually don't know what your fight is, but it's my responsibility to learn more about it. And so that when I do meet someone like you and we do get to collaborate, or you do extend your help to me, or, I get to extend my help to you in terms of figuring it out, in terms of how to break down this systemic violence that we're facing. Definitely, it's not something that I want to put a number or a graph on who has it worst, but we know for a fact that without enough voices coming out, we just don't know the reality of the situation. So what I do, at least, and what I know for a fact that the collectives that I'm part of, is that we don't have our doors closed. We are called Women in Cinema Collective because we do represent women, but we are not saying that there isn't any way that we aren't going to reach out, or we aren't going to take it forward when and if a trans man, a trans woman, a trans person reaches out and says, this is my fight and I would like to take it forward in such a way. Now, with whatever capacity that I can help and I can understand the situation to make it better, I will, because I know what it is like to be in my own whatever way, what it is like to be on the receiving end of it. Now, another problem, what I do feel, is that there is also very less conversation as to what it is that makes us women. Like, what a woman is, and, like, it's not only childbearing women who are women. And so that entire conversation is still being built up, and I'm still studying a lot more about what it feels to be someone who is non-binary. And I will never understand it to the core, but it's important that I continue to be in conversation with people such as yourself and others to know how I can be of service, how I can use my privilege to at least know for a fact that I'm not using up your space. I'm not taking up your space. Like my friend Athira had always mentioned, it's passing the mic. It's not your space to speak for you. So that's what I would like to continue doing. And I hope I'm on the right path. And I'm all open to be corrected if I'm wrong. Thank you, Shyam.
Thank you, Shyam, for the question. I'll just take you to Priya quickly. Priya, how do we make the movement more inclusive, do you think? Like, all of us are Savarna women, and the criticism is there that we do not listen to the voice of many others, and what Shyam has pointed out. But how do you think we can make the movement or any conversation around this more inclusive? What more should we do? I feel like something we're lacking somewhere.
Seed the platforms is one, as Parvati said, one option. Like today's conversation also could have been more inclusive. So we just have to recognize that and keep correcting it wherever we, whenever we can, wherever we can. Build solidarities, recognize our privilege. That's the basics but there are no easy answers to these questions.
True. Okay, we will go to the next question. Aishwarya.
Hi. Priya, just huge admirer of everything that you've done. My question is to you. So I follow the India Love Project handle on Instagram. So I start my day looking at the posts, and at the outset, I should declare that I'm totally pro intercaste, interreligious marriages. But my question to you is: all of these are happy stories, and they are representative of 1% of the society, educated, affluent, and therefore progressive. Do you think it represents the reality of mixed marriages in the country today, or is it giving out a wrong impression?
So India Love was started as a response to my husband and I and a friend of ours had this idea for a long time, but I think we visualized it as a big website, which had legal help and counseling help and sort of for couples, like trans couples, gay couples, interreligious couples, intercaste couples. And then it just wasn't happening because we didn't have the resources or the time. And then sometime in October, the Tanishq ad fiasco happened. And then we decided we just had to be like millennials and launch this on Instagram. And that's what we did, without any bank of stories or anything. We just launched it. And now we have a story a day, which is basically of mainly interreligious couples, but also intercaste, etc. But we have no resources. So it's only in English right now. And the content is user generated. So yeah, the first responders are more middle class, sort of privileged people. But we have reported many stories, some from rural India, and we are tying up with Khabar Lahariya also to have at least one story from rural India every week. And I've reached out to some trans groups also for their stories. People are also reluctant to because we need to know their names, and we carry full names, so that's another hurdle, because it is risky to be an interreligious couple in UP, for example. You don't want your full name out there, so we're trying to work around all these issues. We also want to launch this project in different languages as soon as we get money, and that would also, I think, expand the scope of it. As for our official data on interreligious intercaste marriages, yeah, the figure is very minimal, but I don't even know how true this data is, I mean, like
I do know that when you started out, Priya, you were asking for more representational stories.
Yeah,
that you kept. Yeah, I remember that you said, can we connect to stringers from villages for these stories? So hopefully more will come.
Yeah.
I will go to the next member, Vinayakam.
Hi. Thank you for this opportunity. Big fan of all four of you, including you, Danya. And I have I have two daughters. I cite all of you as role models to them, especially the three of you who have taken a stand publicly, and that requires a lot of courage. My question though is, what do I teach my daughters how to remain sane and how to maintain their individuality at the same time in this world? The world what it is, but how do I teach them to be sane and maintain their individuality?
Let's go to Chinmay first. And I have to tell something here, that though Chinmay has been sounding a bit down today, she's one of the most spunkiest fighters I've ever seen. Like, there are so many days I will tell her, can you keep quiet today? I mean, I've told Parvati also that many times, but Chinmay more times than Parvati, because Chinmay is forever there. Like, anybody says something, Chinmay is there to reply to them. And not just about her. It's in Britain, it's happening in Australia, anywhere in the world, Chinmay is there to reply. So Chinmay,
I just have to say just add one thing here. Chinmay, my younger daughter, she's 11. Her name is Chinmay. I've named her.
So what should Vinayakam tell his daughters on how to keep them sane, educated, and like you?
One of the things that I have known is, if you understand the concept of just holding space as they evolve and understand and make that space very, very safe. If I'm able to be spunky, and if I have, one of my down days and stuff like that, I have a wonderful partner. I have a wonderful family that, and especially in typical Orthodox, South India, Tamil Nadu and all of that, it's very, very rare to find a marital home where everybody just holds space for you to express yourself in any way that you want. At the same time, people like Dhanya have been holding space. Also, sometimes it's like, can you please not speak today? It's sort of a thing as well. All of this, I believe, eventually getting them to read, getting them to form their own opinions, and to make your home a very, very safe space to express these opinions, teaching them very, very early that it's okay to say no, and to respect that no. It starts from there, and from there, I think they'll just evolve to be great human beings on their own. If only if their space is held and they are taught to say it's a safe space to say no. You can share your opinions in a way, and it's okay to make mistakes. We all evolve, and we all, for a lot of these things that we are discussing today, we don't have straight answers. We don't have yes or no answers yet for most of things, and it's also not possible as an evolving, developing society. So this is what I would say.
Parvati?
Chinmaya said this so beautifully. I would like second everything she just said, and the fact that I'd like to take it from the point she said about no, and the fact that no is a full sentence is something that I wish somebody had told me when I was growing up. That I've always felt guilty for saying no and holding space for myself, and I used to explain, why I can't make it, why I can't do this. That rendered me to be an extreme people pleaser, and I'm a recovering people pleaser right now, and I wouldn't want to be that. So most of the young girls now that I get to interact with, if they're asked, if they want something and they say no, I do have, friends, a couple who do not ask them any questions further. That's a wonderful way to create an environment that they get to say something, they get to form their decision, and they are not going to be vilified for it or asked to, put up on, some kind of, I don't know, like, behind the bars for it. So I think that's a great thing to always tell your children, and listening to them. It's something that I've been very lucky to have parents who always listened, and I was notorious in terms of questioning them. Why did you do this?
You still are, I'm sure.
Okay, pretending to not have heard that, but that's true. They did hold space for me. They came from a space where they definitely were told that boys are more important than girls, but for some reason, however, whatever the reason is, my parents turned out to be such amazing people who just couldn't bring that kind of a boundary for me. Or maybe even if they tried, I tore through it. But they did listen. Whenever I have had a problem, they did sit down and listen without forcing a solution onto me. Helping me find a solution on my own. That really has made me, I think before WCC, before, I found my tribe, there was a time when I didn't even know what it felt like to be supported this way. At that time, this really went a long way for me to feel that my opinion and my decisions are complete in itself, that I don't need to prove it for or get it validated by another person. I think that's a great quality to inculcate.
So I would quickly go to Priya, and then we have one more question. That's it. So Priya, like just taking from where Parvati said, my father was extreme. Like if my brother did not come home by 6:30, he'll be very worried. If I don't come home by 9 o'clock, he was okay. He knew that I could take care of myself, and he would be just scared for the population in Palakkad. But the fact that he had so much confidence in me made me a very confident person in turn. So Priya, what I want to ask, and little bit extend from what both Chinmayi and Parvati said, is that do we overcompensate as women? I realized that today when I was talking in a different panel, where they asked me, how did you overcompensate? I took 4-day leave for my wedding. I feel very happy about it. But now I realize that I overcompensated to just show my boss that I'm as good as a man. So do you think we overcompensate a lot in our jobs, in our daily lives?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think we undervalue ourselves all the time. And that's why I would say one of the things you need to teach your daughters is to be comfortable, to teach her to be comfortable in her own brilliance, to not sort of say, oh yeah, I did this, but it's shit, but I actually, I could have done better or whatever. It is brilliant, It's amazing. You've done an amazing job, And I don't know why women are always like, all me included, always feel like, oh my God, what I've written, it's so mediocre, or this is so, but no, we're not, So that I think it's some kind of like conditioning that we all go through. So just to recognize that, and to not give feedback to your child about what she's wearing, just let her develop her own fashion sense. Just keep quiet, whether she tucks a t-shirt in or just leaves it out or ties her hair. Don't comment on her appearance. And I also feel you need to make your daughters understand that you have to be financially independent, and that marriage is not the goal we are all striving for. It's great if you meet someone, and you may want to marry them and you may not want to marry them, but that cannot be your life's goal. That is not what you're going to do when you're 25, So just like these basics, basically, and also like, I feel like, like you should teach her to talk back to you.
Dissent is important.
and please like make her consume some variety of news, not primetime TV, but something that makes her aware of what's going on in the world.
Last question, Indulekha.
Hey, thanks. That's good. Unedited version is one more privilege of being a member, I think. But
Yes.
I'm big fans of all of you guys, Dhanya, including you. Chinmay, my question was for you, and you already kind of addressed the reverse of this, that, people say that, they should learn from you. This is the consequences of speaking out. But could you also share one or two experiences where the reverse has happened, where someone's told you that, because of you, they took the chance to speak out and they've kind of hopefully had a positive outcome?
I'm not aware of the positive outcomes, but I have been a part of a couple of kids naming molesters inside the family. I have been a part of that entire, right from them reaching out to me on Instagram to me having to somehow convince the child to, and when I say child, I mean a 12 to 14-year-old, right? Both times, one was the molester was a grandfather, the other was an uncle. Both times I somehow convinced them over 2 days of talking, let me speak to an adult that you trust. And then after that, I said, this becomes a POCSO case, then I have to be a part of your case if you decide to go legally. So all of this I was a part of. And in both cases, the family was so beautiful. And it actually gave me so much hope because, of course, this individual micro family, the father, the mother, and the immediate family did face backlash from the other extended family saying, how can you do this against X-man and X-man? But they stood like rocks by their own children. And that gave me a lot of hope. There are a lot of other women who do DM me saying that I gain a lot of strength from you and etc. But I'm glad. I mean, but I do tell them that it's not fun. It's not great. Walk into it knowing, fully aware that there are consequences. But when you get into it, you must fight to the finish. It's unfortunately like that. And everything, literally, you need to go like check like that. But there is no other way out. Because as long as I'm concerned personally, the attack is on all sides. And a lot of it is also politically motivated. But for individually, there have been a lot of happy stories that I've heard. So yeah, there is some good in the world.
Yes. So before concluding the session and asking for final comments, Indulekha is also a brilliant journalist. Please read her bylines in the Economic Times. See, I plug members plug me. It's a mutual admiration service. But seriously, do read her brilliant copies. And Chinmay, fight to the finish. Yes, we will. And I would like to say that it's not just this one family who you have influenced. I know at least every 2 weeks you will send me a DM where someone has reached out to you and you have ensured that so many stories are spoken about. And that's how you've kept the movement going. You've made sure that like the story about children in Andhra Pradesh, girls, if they are menstruating, they actually make them remove their underwear and check. That came out a few days ago because somebody reached out to Chinmay. And then she told us and we wrote about it. But it's we make change every day with every story or everything that we share. So we'll end the session with a small closing comment from everyone here that could include praise for me. But other than that, Priya.
I love you, Dhanya. Thank you for the opportunity.
That's not your closing comment. I was kidding. Okay, Priya, yes.
So after my verdict, there was like huge positive response from women, and everybody took the verdict personally. They felt like they had won. And I had like thought about why that was the case. Was it because it's such a universal experience, or maybe it's just because we have so few victories, and to get such a definitive victory is rare, and it just gives you that little hope to keep carrying on in whatever fight you're soldiering on. So soldier on, I say.
Soldier on. Chinmay?
No, I said I have given my comment. I love you and I love the News Minute. Read the News Minute, subscribe, read, like.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, she really took it very seriously. Parvati?
Ditto. So the reason why I came for this session, there are multiple reasons, obviously, but before I came to know it was going to be, Priya and Chinmay coming in, Danya messaged me saying, I know you're on like a sabbatical and everything, but like you have to come, okay? Like, because it's a News Minute members only thing, like you have to come. And for me, my friends have never failed to amaze me with their steadfastness, with their determination. I find them a lot stronger than me. And Danya has been, this is not because you said praise me and all. Seriously.
But I'm enjoying it. Yeah.
But especially since what's been going on, and there's a lot of news portals, including News Minute, that's under the radar of, the Big Brother and like all the extremists. So for us to sustain a really neutral space where all conversations such as this can go on, it's very important. So to be very honest, my reason for joining this was also because I wanted to be part of the News Minute, and I want to continue to support it. And in a way, I realized that I actually, to be honest, had a terrible day today. For many reasons, including feeling everything is pointless and isse kuch nahi hone wala kind of a mood. But this definitely was my go-to. In my head, I was like, I'm nervous. I'm really not ready to face the camera. I have those moments a lot, but this was going to be my pick-me-up. So wherever I find my tribe, I'm going to cling on to it. And thank you, News Minute, for finding this tribe for me.
Thank you so much for the kind words, everyone. And to all the members out here, do share your experiences, because as Parvati said, to survive and sustain, we need your help. It's been wonderful speaking to all three of you, and I'm really happy that we had this session. And I take what Priya said, that next time we have to be more inclusive, even while we arrange a session. So we will keep that in mind. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to all the members.